92 to 95 FM, 810 medium wave, and on digital radio. BBC Radio Scotland.
Many thanks, Bruce. Good morning, I'm Kay Adams with you until noon today. Coming up on the show, I'm going to speak to a man who experienced his parents splitting up, which I guess is a relatively common experience these days. But he was well in his 50s and his mum and dad were in their 80s. Mum was 81 when she decided that she would like to go out alone, and obviously he was very much involved in getting them both kind of resettled into life. So we'll be speaking to him before midday. 40% of marriages in the UK end in divorce. It's a fairly familiar statistic, unfortunately, but you would tend to think that once they hit the kind of golden anniversary stage that they're pretty solid. Not so for Graham Russell's mum and dad. His mum decided it was time to make the break and move into her own flat at the age of 81, leaving Graham, I'm sure, to draw on all of his experience as a relationship counsellor. Good morning to you, Graham.
Good morning, Kay.
Good morning. I imagine an unusual occurrence for someone to decide that that's... How long had your mum and dad been married?
Well, they got married in 1955, so this year would probably be, I think it works about 60, that'd be the 61st wedding anniversary.
Right. Did it come as a surprise to you that they decided to call it a day?
It wasn't a surprise. I mean, it's something that my mum had kind of wanted to do for a long time. In fact, she did have some kind of a dress rehearsal sort of about 20 odd years ago when she kind of left and kind of worked for a wealthy couple as a kind of live-in housekeeper. And it didn't really work out. It didn't give her the freedom that she wanted. And then so she went back and, they kind of continued on with their lives together, but kind of separate. And it was just last year that she really decided to make that break and branch out on her own.
And when they were together, but clearly not... Well, were they unhappy? I mean, how were they together in those years before your mum decided to make the split?
Well, it's interesting, kind of growing up, that's all you kind of know. Your parents are your parents. But, as the years kind of went on, I think their lives... They seemed to do their own thing in their own lives. They had kind of different interests. And it wasn't like there was one definitive thing or one thing that happened that kind of made them, or really my mum wanting to leave my dad. I don't think there was any one thing. It was just very gradual. They just very gradually just started sort of drifting apart.
And so it wasn't that there were great rows or, any sort of dreadful atmosphere within the house? No. And I think that's, I mean, in some ways you kind of might think that's unusual, but the people just sort of splitting apart, often there is kind of some kind of dramatic event that kind of causes that split. But, I didn't see that with them. It just seemed a very gradual process. I mean, sorry, you carry on.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I don't actually think that's unusual either. I think a lot of couples do gradually drift away and they just kind of lose that connection, that kind of the reason what brought them together in the first place.
No, I was just thinking, I mean, in your professional expertise is in, relationship coaching, leadership coaching, etc. And yet also a son, clearly. Did you have a different response to this as, the son, as opposed to, a relationship counsellor?
I think it was kind of a mixture of both, in terms of how I reacted and how I responded. Clearly it wasn't a question that they both wanted to get together and kind of work this out, which is, kind of what a lot of couples, might do or want to do. I just think it had just gone too far down the line. So in a sense, really what they wanted was their own lives. They weren't happy together. And, in terms of professionally, I just want, couples to be happy, and also as a son, I want them to be happy as well. So it was that kind of mixture of both my kind of professional work and being a son as well. It's just, wanting them to be happy and wanting them to have the best life that they can, while they're here.
I mean, obviously, you're in your 50s, so kind of set up in your own life. Did it have an impact on you to think, oh, my mum and dad have split up? There was when it wasn't a surprise when it happened,
because it's something that my mum had sort of been planning for a long time, but it was just that courage. But I think once she had moved and she was in her own flat, I did kind of have that realisation, my God, you know, they're both separate now, they're both living separate lives. And in some sense, that was kind of a relief that they both kind of got what they wanted, or certainly my mum had really kind of got what she wanted. And there was a sense of relief there. And then I kind of really had to sort of think about my role as a son and, you know, what birthday is going to be like, or what Christmas is going to be like, you know, with three of us in three different places.
Mm. And has it been the right decision for them all? From what you say, it sounds as if it was your mother who has taken the lead in this.
Yeah, definitely. She's definitely taken the lead. It was certainly something that she wanted to do. And yes, it was definitely the right decision because they're, you know, my mum's certainly much, much happier now. She has her own kind of space, her own freedom. She does her own things, the classes that she goes to and things that she volunteers on. So it gives her that kind of that freedom. And
what about your dad?
Well, my dad, it's a kind of a shame, but he just kind of plods on with his life and just seems to take it, you know, as it comes. You know, he hasn't really sort of reacted. I remember talking to him like years ago when my mum first left, you know, and he said, you know, it was a shame that's how the marriage had gone, and that was kind of it, really. You know, he just seems to take each day as it comes and just plods on with his life. Yeah, so kind of a long relationship that kind of went out with a whimper, really. Yeah, very gradually just sort of drifting away and just back into their own worlds. It does make you wonder, doesn't it? You know, how many other relationships, such long-standing relationships, have kind of fallen into the same state, really, because I mean nowadays people don't stick together, you know, people just are too flighty and they move on, and we always kind of hark back to, you know, 60-year relationships and you know, longer, but we rarely question if they're always successful relationships. Yeah, and I was just thinking, as before this programme, I was just thinking about, you know, other friends of mine at the same age, you know, and their parents, you know, are still together. You just don't hear of couples sort of splitting up at that age. But it happens, and in a sense, it feels inspirational. You know, my mum actually making that leap feels inspirational because, you know, if you've been together for 50 or 60 years, that doesn't mean to say you've actually got to stay together forever till death us do part, which is, you know, obviously the vow that you kind of make when you get married. But there's no point, you know, if your relationship isn't working and you don't want to get back together, then it's time to move on. Yeah. Even at 81. Well, Graham, thank you very much. You know, it's an intriguing story. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, talking about long relationships.
92 to 95 FM, BBC Radio Scotland.